For 5 years, my parents didn't call. No birthdays, no holidays, no accidental check-ins meant for someone else. Nothing. At first, I kept my phone close. Then I stopped charging it overnight. Then I stopped expecting anything at all. Absence has a way of settling into routine. After a while, it doesn't even feel personal. It feels finalized. That afternoon, I was on the deck of my yacht, barefoot, coffee gone cold in my hand. The sea was calm in that flat, glassy way that makes you forget time exists. My phone buzzed. I frowned. Notifications weren't part of my life anymore. It was a post. My uncle, Richard Moore. One photo, no caption, just me, leaning against the rail, sun in my eyes, nothing staged about it. I almost laughed. He meant well. He always had. I slid my phone back into my pocket. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. A name I hadn't seen in years lit up the screen. Marion, my mother. The message was short, too short. You should sell it to save the family. That was it. No greeting, no question, no acknowledgement of the years that disappeared between us. I read it slowly, then again, like maybe I'd missed a line. Maybe there was a follow-up explaining what family meant now. There wasn't. I looked out at the water, the quiet stretching in every direction, and felt something tighten. Not anger, not even hurt. Understanding. They hadn't broken their silence because they missed me. They'd broken it because something was on the line. And suddenly, the 5 years of quiet made a different kind of sense. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because before I answered that message, I needed to decide something far more important. Whether I was about to disappear again, or finally be seen on my own terms. People assume erasure comes with shouting. It didn't. It came quietly. Missed calls that stopped coming back. Group chats that moved on without me. Updates about my younger brother passed along like footnotes, if they were passed along at all. My name is Rhea Calder. I was 30 when the silence settled in for good. I didn't fight it. Not because I agreed, because arguing with absence is exhausting. You can't correct people who've already decided you're inconvenient. My father, Thomas, believed distance fixed things. My mother, Marianne, believed time softened edges. My brother, Evan, just stopped asking questions. That was easier for him. The only person who didn't pretend was my uncle Richard Moore. He'd call once every few months, never asking why, never pushing, just still breathing, followed by a laugh. It was his way of saying I existed. I moved twice, changed jobs, learned how to build days that didn't hinge on anyone else's approval. I stopped posting online. Not as a statement, it just felt unnecessary to perform a life no one wanted to acknowledge. Somewhere along the way, I realized something uncomfortable. They weren't waiting for me to fail. They'd already written me off. And that kind of freedom does something strange to you. It doesn't make you louder, it makes you careful, intentional, private. So when that message came, 5 years late and perfectly timed, it didn't reopen a wound, it confirmed one. Because families who erase you don't come back to apologize. They come when something breaks. And I had a feeling I was about to learn exactly what that was. Before I go on, pause here for a second. If you've ever been quietly pushed out of a family, not with a fight but with silence, if you've ever realized one day that no one noticed you'd gone, this part is for you. Let me know where you're listening from, or just leave a dot if this hit closer than you expected. All right, now let me tell you what they wanted from me, and why the timing wasn't a coincidence. I didn't reply to my mother right away. That wasn't a tactic. I genuinely didn't know what to say. Not because the request shocked me, but because of how familiar it felt. Like we'd skipped the part where people check in on each other and jumped straight to extraction. I stared at the message again. To save the family. Save it from what? And why now? My Uncle Richard called that evening. He sounded hesitant, which wasn't like him. Your mom reached out, he said, not a question. I know, I replied. He exhaled slowly. They're not doing great, Rhea. Haven't been for a while. That was new information. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it just hadn't been worth sharing before. I asked him what kind of trouble. He didn't answer directly. He never does when the truth is complicated. Just money, he said finally, and pride, the usual mix. After we hung up, I walked the length of the deck, letting the motion of the water steady me. I thought about the last real conversation I'd had with my parents, tried to remember what they'd said before the silence became permanent. Nothing stood out. That's the thing about being erased. There's no final argument to replay, no dramatic exit, just a gradual realization that you're no longer part of the equation. So when they suddenly remembered me, remembered I existed at all, it didn't feel like reconciliation. It felt like accounting. I opened my messages, hovered over the reply bar, then closed it again, because before I responded, I needed to know one thing. What exactly had gone wrong that made them finally look my way again? They didn't wait long. The next morning my phone rang, not a text this time, an actual call. I watched it vibrate on the table until it stopped, then started again seconds later. It was my father, Thomas. I answered on the third ring. You saw the message, he said. No greeting, no easing in, straight to business. We need to talk. I'm listening, I replied. There was a pause, the kind people take when they're deciding how much truth to admit at once. Things changed, he said. Your brother made some decisions, investments. We stepped in to help. I leaned back against the rail, eyes on the water. Help how? Another pause, longer this time. The house is at risk, he admitted, and Evan's company, it's not what we thought. Not, we're sorry, not, we should have handled things differently. Just consequences, finally speaking for themselves. And the yacht? I asked. My mother's voice cut in sharply. It's an asset, Rhea. Families make sacrifices. I almost smiled. 5 years of silence, and suddenly they were experts on sacrifice. I'm selling it, I said slowly, because you didn't plan for failure. That's not fair, Marianne snapped. No, it's accurate. The line went quiet. I could hear breathing on the other end, papers shifting, a clock ticking, the sound of people who weren't used to being questioned. We raised you, my father said, finally. You owe us something. I closed my eyes. That sentence hadn't changed in 5 years. Only the position I was hearing it from had. I don't owe you my life, and I'm not fixing what you refused to face. My mother started talking again, faster now, urgent, emotional. I didn't stay to hear it. I ended the call. And as the phone went dark in my hand, I realized something quietly decisive. This wasn't the start of a conversation. It was the end of an assumption, and they just hadn't caught up yet. They arrived 3 days later. No warning, no asking, just a marina slip number texted to me like an announcement. I watched from the upper deck as my parents stepped off the dock, faces tight, my brother Evan a half step behind them. He looked smaller than I remembered, not humbled, cornered. This is unnecessary, my mother Marianne said as soon as she saw me. She gestured at the water, the boat, the quiet. You didn't need to make this a scene. I laughed once. It surprised all of us. You flew here, I said, boarded my boat, and I'm the one making a scene? My father cleared his throat. We just want to talk, as a family. Evan finally spoke. It's temporary, he said quickly. Just a bridge. I'll pay you back. I waited. For remorse, for something resembling memory. It didn't come. You didn't know where I lived for 5 years. You didn't know my number. You didn't know if I was okay. My mother waved that away. We're here now. That was the tell. Now, when it mattered to them.
I stepped aside and pointed to the dock. "You should go." Silence fell heavy and awkward, the kind that exposes motives. "This is heartless," Marianne said. "No, it's accurate." They left without another word. Evan didn't look back. As their backs disappeared down the pier, I felt it. Not triumph, not relief. Alignment. For the first time in years, my life matched the truth I'd been living. They didn't fall apart all at once. That's not how it works. The silence came back again, sharper this time. Messages stopped, calls went unanswered. It was familiar, almost comforting, like an old habit resuming its place. Richard called a week later. He didn't try to soften it. "Your brother's business is done. No bailout this time." I pictured Evan the way he'd stood on the dock. Urgent, rehearsed, already counting on rescue. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was distance, the kind that lets you see patterns clearly. My parents listed the house quietly. No announcement, no goodbyes, just a downsizing that pretended to be practical. I wasn't asked for help again. Pride has limits, but so does entitlement once it's been denied. Life on my end stayed steady. Meetings, maintenance, early mornings where the water looked like glass, and the horizon didn't demand anything from me. I kept my circle small, chosen. No updates shared where they could be found. One night, another message came through from my mother. Just one line. "We never meant to hurt you." I didn't answer. Meaning isn't the same as impact, and intention doesn't rewind time. What surprised me wasn't how quickly things unraveled for them. It was how little I felt responsible. Because saying no didn't create their problems, it just removed the illusion that I was meant to solve them. And once that illusion was gone, everything stood exactly as it was. Unassisted, unprotected, honest. I used to think closure came with conversation. A long talk, tears, someone finally saying the right thing at the right time. It didn't. Closure came on a quiet morning when I realized I wasn't checking my phone anymore. Not out of discipline, out of disinterest. Whatever version of me waited for recognition had finally moved on. Richard called a month later. He didn't try to bring updates unless I asked. He never tried to fix anything. He just sat with me on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the water move like it had nowhere urgent to be. He said at one point, "They're blaming each other now." Not gossip, just information. I nodded. That tracked. Families that survive on favoritism don't know what to do when the safety net refuses to appear. Someone always has to hold the weight. When no one volunteers, cracks show. "What about you?" he asked. "You okay?" I thought about it. Really thought. "I am," I said. And it wasn't defensive. It didn't need explaining. Later that night, I found an old photo buried in my phone. Me at 22, smiling too hard, standing at the edge of a frame, half cropped out. I deleted it. Not because it hurt, because it didn't fit anymore. Here's the truth they never understood. Leaving quietly isn't weakness. It's preparation. And when you build a life that doesn't rely on being chosen, you stop asking why people didn't choose you in the first place. That's when the noise fades, and the peace finally sounds like your own voice.
Some lessons don't arrive as realizations. They settle, slowly, the way salt settles into skin after hours in the sun. I stopped measuring my life in milestones other people could recognize. Promotions mattered less than autonomy. Stability mattered more than applause. The quiet became something I protected, not something I filled. Once, months later, my mother tried again, a voice message this time, softer, almost unfamiliar. "You've changed," she said, not accusing, observing. "You used to need us." I replayed it once, then I archived it. Needing people who erase you isn't loyalty, it's habit, and habits can be broken. The yacht became less of a symbol and more of a place. Morning light, evenings where the air cooled gently, work done without interruptions disguised as concern. I learned how to enjoy what I built without wondering who might demand a share. Richard remained, always did, never asked for anything, never hinted, just presence. That was the difference. Family, I realized, isn't who claims you, it's who doesn't disappear when nothing is being offered. I didn't tell anyone that. I didn't post it. I didn't frame it as wisdom. I just lived it. And over time, something shifted in me that no apology could have fixed. I stopped needing them to understand, because understanding isn't required when you've already chosen yourself. And the life you build in silence rarely asks you to explain how it works. People think the ending is the refusal. It's not. The ending is what happens after, when no one is watching to see if you'll soften, when there's no audience to impress, when the decision settles into ordinary days. I never heard from my parents again. Not really. No long apology, no reckoning, just distance that finally stayed where it belonged. Evan moved on quickly, in the way people do when they don't want to sit with consequences. New ideas, new plans, same patterns. I wasn't asked to participate, and I didn't offer. What I didn't give back was access. Not to my money, not to my space, not to my life. I used to think forgiveness meant reopening the door a little, leaving it unlocked, staying available just in case. I was wrong. Forgiveness, for me, looked like not carrying resentment and still keeping the door closed. Some people confuse boundaries with punishment. They aren't. They're clarity. They're the shape your life takes once you stop negotiating your worth. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. People who erase you don't get to rewrite you later. People who abandon you don't get to return as beneficiaries. And family isn't proven by who asks for sacrifice. It's proven by who never demanded it in the first place. I didn't save the family. I saved myself. And that was the only ending that ever made sense. I used to wonder if they'd ever understand, if one day it would click, the cost of 5 quiet years, the weight of being erased, the audacity of asking me to fix what I was never included in. I imagined explanations, speeches, a moment where everything lined up neatly. It never came, and that was fine, because my life stopped waiting for their comprehension a long time ago. The yacht is still here, so is the work, the mornings that begin without dread, the evenings that end without second-guessing myself. I don't measure success the way I used to, by how visible it is or who acknowledges it. I measure it by peace, by how little I feel the urge to justify my choices, by how rarely my past interrupts my present, by how steady my hands feel on the wheel of something I built without applause. Sometimes I think about the message my mother sent, to save the family. What she meant was fix what we broke without ever admitting we broke it. I didn't, and that refusal didn't harden me, it clarified me. If you're listening to this and you're being asked to sacrifice yourself to repair people who never protected you, pause. You're allowed to step away without an argument. You're allowed to build quietly. You're allowed to keep what you earned. The people who disappear when you have nothing don't get to return when you finally have everything. Not access, not explanations, not you. And the moment you accept that, you stop needing their approval at all. If this story felt a little too real, not dramatic, not loud, then you're not alone. Like it if you've ever realized silence was the clearest message you got. Subscribe if you believe protecting your peace is more important than fixing people who never showed up. And if someone came to mind while listening, send this to them quietly.